Guys, like, comment, subscribe, share the video, especially if you love college football. Michigan, Texas, Florida State, Oregon, Auburn, Notre Dame as much as I do. Speaking of Michigan and Texas, I've already made a Texas fan edition of this video. Where's the hat at? Get that thing real quick. Oh yes, Texas. But it ain't about pulling for y'all today. It's about pulling for Michigan today. And this game is heartbreaking for me because I really like both teams. On one hand, you have Jim Harbaugh, who's really elevated himself and Michigan football in general by beating Ohio State, by winning 10 games or more for the last few years. They've been better as far as penalties than they've ever been. Defense is still really good, if not better than what it already was. Just a really good football team, something you gotta respect. I love Jim Harbaugh's story. It's not the fact that they've been winning more since giving me a reason to really pull for them openly. It's Jim Harbaugh's story with how he was supposed to be fired. He wasn't a very good coach. People were bad-mouthing him, and nobody really thought much of Michigan going into 2021. But that really drew my attention, the fact that he overcame a lot of doubters. And I know Michigan hasn't won a national championship or anything yet, but they're a pretty good football team. How can you not love that story? And even then, I talked to a few Ohio State fans here and there. They're like, yeah, I get where you're coming from. Well, how can you not pull for that, you know? That's so inspiring. Now, Texas, they're a really good football team, too. They've actually been a bit of a disappointment for the last several years. Now, with Coach Sarkisian, it's hard for me to really talk about where I stand with him. On one hand, I'm happy with what he's done because Texas finally has a defense now, something they have not had even under Coach Tom Herman. But their offense is not very good. Outside of Bijan Robinson, who is now gone, by the way, they've had a lot of penalties. They still play a little sloppy on the offensive side of the ball, even though they have one of the more talented rosters in the country. So I don't really know how to feel about Texas, but I do know they're a formidable opponent for anybody. Anybody that has played Texas. Let's talk about TCU, because TCU made it to the championship game. One of the top three, the number 2 team in the country. They've played Alabama. They've played a lot of these teams. They played Georgia several years ago in the Sugar Bowl. Now, let's be honest. If Georgia showed up to play, I think they still would have beat Texas, but it would have been a tough game probably just because Texas has so much talent, especially with Coach Tom Herman being there recruiting, and now Coach Sarkisian is recruiting very well also. Heck, he brought in Arch Manning, the best quarterback in high school this past year, so that's amazing. Now, coming into 2024, I know this game, and again, I know this game's a far ways away, but it's a marquee matchup. It's a week 1 game, season opener. It's a lot of money involved. They're both most likely going to be ranked in the top 25 somewhere. It's played here, so that draws my attention as well. North versus South, that's what this is. And I think we all know what happens. Here's the thing, as a Michigan fan, I'm going to be honest with you. Outside of the Big Ten and anybody else they've played in their regular season, and outside of bad Florida teams in 2015, even 2017, Michigan has not really beaten a really good football team from the South that I can remember, ever. That worries me as a Michigan fan. I know Texas has had their problems, but anytime Michigan plays someone like Georgia, TCU, Alabama, they always fall short. You know, it's just something about the South. They really take their football seriously. Not to say teams like Michigan or even our arch rival Ohio State don't take football seriously. Clearly they do because they get great players. Let's talk about Michigan, Aiden Hutchinson. They've had Desmond Howard, who made it to the NFL. Ohio State, oh my goodness, Ezekiel Elliott. They've had so many defensive backs come out of there. Dan Hooker. They've had Malik Hooker, I'm sorry. They've had so many good athletes come out of Ohio State. But for some reason in college, they just don't match up very well with each other, you know. Ohio State, same thing. Outside of that one game with Alabama, they usually don't play good against the South teams. Except Clemson in the COVID year, but that's besides the point. The point is, that worries me. Now, the fact that Texas has problems, more problems than Michigan. See, Michigan is, again, a very disciplined team. Their offensive line holds up pretty good with everybody that they play. They don't give up penalties. The defense doesn't give up any penalties. They're very hard-nosed. They're good on the line, along the lines of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. My problem with them playing Texas is also a very, very physical football team. And the reason why teams like Alabama or Georgia, even if they play Georgia again, LSU, teams that Texas doesn't beat, they still have a hard time playing Texas. Why? Because they're a physical team. They're good along the lines of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. And they're very talented. Guess who's more talented out of Michigan and Texas? Get that hat back. Oh, on the floor. Sorry, Texas. Texas. Way more talented. When these teams play each other, I would not be shocked to see Texas beat my Michigan Wolverines. Because the thing is, again, very physical along the line of scrimmage. What will help Michigan? What will give Michigan a chance to beat Texas in 2024? Now, this is saying of neither coach is there anymore. Let's say Harbaugh stops flirting and actually goes to the NFL. Let's say Sark doesn't cut it in 2023 and they let him go. As far as matchup with players, talent, and how this works, I would still pick Texas. Let me give you a scenario. The same scenario I gave you in my last video with Texas and Michigan. Auburn played Oregon. Oregon was a top 10 quality team. They won the Rose Bowl that year. Auburn didn't even get the 10 wins, but they were a formidable opponent for anybody. Nobody blew out Auburn. Auburn beat Oregon. Was Auburn better than Oregon? No, but their defensive line was very physical. They made plays. Outside of the 2 touchdowns that Oregon had in the first half, they couldn't do much in the second half as far as scoring points and doing what they wanted to do. Auburn shut that down. Their offense wasn't great, but they came back to win because they were a more physical team than Oregon was. So I see something like that happening with Texas and Michigan, but I think it'll be lower scoring than 27-21. I don't think Michigan, as good as they are, as physical as they are, disciplined as they are, I don't think they can hang up. I don't think they can play up front with a team like Texas who's very physical. I don't think they'll be able to stop Texas enough to win that game. I think Texas's offense will be better by then. I still don't think it'll be an elite offense, given the problems that I've seen with penalties and overthrown passes, dropped passes, turnovers here and there that still exist within Texas's football program. But because of the talent and the physicality, it's like, I still think Texas does enough to win, whether it's home or away, and it's in Michigan. Now, even though I know Michigan's a disciplined, clean football team, I still think Texas's physicality and resiliency is better than Michigan's. Realistically, 20-16, 20-17, something like that. Very low scoring. But I think it'll be a great game. I think it's a game Michigan could win if everything goes right for them. And Texas just is that. If Texas offense is that abysmal, and Texas just some reason has a hard time stopping Michigan's run game, which they will do probably, okay, I think Texas wins that game. It could get ugly, but because it's in the big house, I don't think it's going to get ugly. I think the fans are going to go crazy. I think Michigan's going to be inspired to play a team like Texas, but I have Texas beating Michigan, most likely.